the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to show 42, part 2 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast. If you haven't listened to part 1 from last week, where we talked about, Gary and myself talked about the news, and we covered all sorts of things like the hybrid paradox. We talked about how you can actually collaborate with Power Apps now, which is really exciting, and how you can use Excel for code, which is slightly strange. But do go back and have a listen to or check out the show notes for that. Because in part 2, for those watching video may have noticed, we don't have a Gary, but we do have an Al back, and we have a guesting Karoliina, who I'll introduce in a minute, but we're going to be talking about employee experience with Viva. So Karoliina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Kevin. And hi, Al. Nice to be in here today. So I'm Karoliina Kettukari. I come from Helsinki, Finland. I'm a modern work lead at Meltlake, and everything I do revolves around teams, Viva connections, and all this cool employee experience stuff we are going to talk about today.
Fantastic, thank you, and thank you. I will try and get your surname.
If everything that you do is around Viva connections and Viva and employee experience, what on earth were you doing a year ago?
I have been doing intranets in Teams since 2019 without Viva connections.
There was life before Viva, wasn't there? Sometimes we need to remind ourselves that
no one cared about employees back then. It's only since Viva came out that anyone cares about employees. Only since the pandemic. Before that, we all had to fight for ourselves. I think that's right. Anyway, before we go on to arguing, we're going to try and cover 3-ish topics. So we're going to kick off with a slightly familiar but a really important topic, which is why employee experience matters, what the evidence around that is, and if our memories help, we'll try and think of some numbers to go that as well. But then we're going to go into about what you as an employee can do with Viva, so almost the kind of experience for yourself and what that helps. And then finish also, no pun there with finish there, apologies, finish with how organisations can help manage that change, because I think it's really important that as you put the employee experience things out there, you actually need to consider the employee experience for them and how that's going to make a difference. But we'll kick off, and Karoliina, going to throw you into the dragon pit first. Why does employee experience actually matter?
I think that was an excellent point from Al, that what did we do a year ago? Because I think a year ago we didn't talk about employee experience at all that much. But I think we did the same kind of projects, we did same kind of things. And now when we have been working remotely these past 1.5, almost 2 years, too bad. I think we have been noticing some changes in our work environment, our mental health, our physical health, our habits, how we work. And that's why we have also focused on more about well-being at work, and how can we, for example, make the line between work life and our free time more clear than before. Because otherwise we would just be working 24/7 here in my kitchen. So I think the topic
not all of us, that would be a bit too crowded.
It would be a bit crowded, because literally like this is like 2 square meters. Small. but yeah, I think the topic has been there behind all the time, but now it has become evident because of these drastic changes we have gone through during these past years.
I think that's right. It is the change, isn't it? It's suddenly everybody having to change really highlights what the impact of that change is. And organizations, when they were thinking about change before, would take a lot of time. They would think about it, they might plan it, or they might just do it, but they wouldn't necessarily measure the outcome of that change in quite the same way. And they've had to actually accept that an unplanned change had to take place, and it had some really adverse impacts, which, let's face it, no IT projects ever have any adverse impacts. Everything's always positive and it's always successful, but
It's
getting
a
people
feature,
to
not a
change,
bug.
yeah, getting people to change where they work is a massive one. And as you say, your kitchen might be 2 square meters, but you're not going to be comfortable working there day in, day out forever. Whereas a lot of people, I think that's it, isn't it? They want to be in the office, they miss being in the office. There's so many reasons why people don't want to work at home. And then there are so many reasons why people do want to work at home. And now we see all of these organizations saying we all have to go back or we all have to stay away. It's kind of like, well, actually, as an individual, I have some choice in this, and I can choose to go work for that company over there because I'm going to be able to work in the office, or that company there because I'm going to work remotely. And companies need to think about that, and they need to think about the experience of their employees and how they retain them, how they invite them and attract them and get that talent, but also making sure they're all happy and are not burning out.
I think there were some great stats. I know we've talked about this a lot on the show, and Karoliina, you mentioned it before that, but Microsoft.com/worklab, that the kind of cost of actually replacing someone is not just, you've got to rehire, you've got the time it takes to do all that hiring, you've got the kind of back and forth, talking with agents, talking with the people you're hiring themselves, you've got people doing interviews, considering all those different interviews, and then even once they join, you've got that time it takes for that new person to get up to speed. All that while, if there's been a gap between someone leaving and you rehiring, you've got another person who was meant to be doing things that you've got to fill the gap for other people. So you're losing the amount of utilization you can get through. Your productivity as a company has dipped, and it's a huge amount that actually takes place there. So I always feel I get hammered slightly for saying this, but the reality of many organizations, you've got to look at the cost of things. That's what is their kind of way of measuring from any point, rightly or wrongly. I will happily argue on the different points on that, but to many people, they will look at cost, and the hit to the bottom line of having to replace people is huge. And compare that with the cost of considering what people think, having more happy, productive people. I think there are so many stats now that you can quote, again, look on the Work Lab, that says if you have happier people, you're going to be more profitable as an organization, you're going to be more productive, you're going to get the most out of people. So investing that time in employee experience is kind of a no-brainer, because you have happier people, you make your staff happier, and you make more money as well.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a very difficult thing to measure, that productivity, isn't it? There's so many factors in what you've just described about taking somebody on and either replacing somebody or bringing somebody new in. There are so many things that can make that process easy, and there are so many things that people, when they join, they'll go, well, this doesn't make much sense, why are you doing it this way? It worked a lot better where I was before. And that's always an interesting experience to see, having been in the position to hire people, and also having just changed jobs myself recently. It's a really interesting experience, not one I want to go through very often, but there are so many things that I think as an employee experience, Viva is now bringing to the table to make that easier, to make that change, that transition easier, but also to improve life for existing employees and make their daily jobs easier as well. And I think that's where everything is geared around. Make it simple, make it easy, make it as easy as possible to be as happy as possible.
I like that. That's an excellent goal. And because you mentioned productivity, and of course we all want to be more productive, and organizations want that their employees are more productive, but that's a very difficult thing to really measure. And I think it was also one of the Work Lab work trend studies that showed that we are being more productive than ever, but also we are being exhausted and feeling that as well, because our productive ways are, for example, having 10 meetings in a day.
Yes, that's not productive.
That sounds like a nice quiet day.
Yeah, I'm very busy, but am I being productive? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Busy is not necessarily productive.
Yes.
And I think that's it's an interesting fact that we've got all of this information, and we keep talking about work lab. There's so much data and science there, and the fact that the pandemic has brought all of that, made it all bubble up to the top so that we can see it, and helped Microsoft shape what they're doing and how they're delivering some of these services, means that we're suddenly thinking about it very differently, aren't we? We're looking at data very differently, but then we're looking at the products that are coming out of that data and going, couldn't have seen that coming 18 months ago. We probably wouldn't have thought they would be having Viva connections or Viva learning, or it's just not the sort of thing that we would have expected, and not combined as an employee experience platform.
Now that I agree with. I was going to say, I think it's always the kind of bad thing about Viva that people say from a technical point of view, there's not so much that's particularly new. That there's using intranets, which, as Karoliina said, there's been intranets and personalization with SharePoint for quite a while. I think, and obviously, I don't know if you saw me gazing off, I was kind of thinking there, what has changed? Because when it comes to the pandemic, and I know in the work lab it's talked about, yes, we've had more meetings, but I think actually before then I was doing a fair few meetings, and certainly when I came from financial services, there would, joking aside, 10, 12 meetings a day would be fairly normal, and that kind of burnout was fairly resident there. What is it about the pandemic that's actually surfaced that? Is it because people have kind of broken that routine? Is that actually the change that's happened? It's not that any of this is new. These are things that have been going on for a while, but suddenly that routine is broken. We've had to stop and think about the way we do things, and it's given the opportunity to kind of go, these things really are bad. We have the opportunity to do things better. We keep talking about hybrid and that, but suddenly people have been talking about that ability to work anywhere. The remote working has been going on for a while. Suddenly that opportunity has come to make those differences, and we should grab it as much as possible. And that's why Viva has come about, because it's pulled all those elements which actually make sense to deliver into a common brand and said, this is why. It's not different reasons for each of these different things. It is employee experience. That's why you're looking to do these. And here's why you should do that, and trying to make that story a lot better to people as well.
I think it's not that there's necessarily new things. It's different. It's the difference between being office-based and being able to, book a meeting and go, oh, it's in. I mean, I remember one client in particular was hilarious. They worked in a very old building in the centre of London, and they literally built in about 15 minutes between every meeting, because you had to try and find a room, and it was an absolute maze. And so you had that transition between meetings. So as soon as you get online, it's easy, back-to-back meetings all day. And I think it's the change where you don't have that transition. You don't have the same interactions. You don't have the same mental breaks between, I'm concentrating on this screen, now I'm going to go and sit and face these people, now I'm going to go and wander across and get a coffee. That experience mentally is very different than, I'm going to just sit here for 12 hours straight and have my 24 meetings, and they're all going to be back to back, and I'm going to be, in quotes, productive all the way through the day.
And one thing we are missing is spontaneous meetings and all the small talk we usually have with each other when we are having the coffee or before the meeting starts. Now when the meeting starts, we go straight to business, and then it's business the whole 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then it's the next meeting, and everything's just about business. And all the even though we are at home, the normal conversations, how's the weather, oh, you have a nice dress, all those are gone.
And this is where, a lot of what we're talking about with Viva, it has its foundation.
I disagree on that dress comment, because you were commenting me wearing pants just before we started recording, Karoliina. So, those conversations do happen remotely, but I know what you mean there. Sorry, Al.
So I was going to say, most of the technologies that we're talking about have their basis in things that were happening beforehand. Workplace analytics was telling us about meetings, was telling us about our collaboration and our network, telling us about quiet time, but it wasn't really at the forefront. And I think that's what Viva's really done, is it's pushed a lot of this and made it front and center with science to back up why it's important. And I think that's really a fundamental difference, is that we're now talking about scientifically backed reasons to do some of this, rather than, oh, well, it's a big software company and they're just trying to sell us more.
Yeah, but I think lots of this has been there already. The difference now is we've stopped and kind of things have changed, and when there is change, there's the opportunity to look and do things better. And I think that's, I think that things have actually absolutely changed with the pandemic, but that's the opportunity to look at things we were doing before as well as during the pandemic and do them better now.
Yeah, and I also think the thing of Viva is that it simplifies things. So it's not just like for new solutions, for new applications you have, but it's actually just bringing those capabilities inside your one window, which is Teams in Windows. So basically it gives you the same information, but you can find it more easily. It's brought to you in more centralized ways. So instead of having to go to office.com, click my analytics, you can just be in your Teams and then click on the Insights button, and you have all the same things directly in there.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that, Viva Insights bringing that, the virtual commute is bringing other things into that mix. It's over and above some of the things that were in my analytics, being able to say, actually, I can praise people in there. I can schedule my quiet time in there. I can also see if I'm using to do my tasks from my day and make sure they're all tied off, see any other tasks that I might need to do. It's really bringing even more together and using that as a focal point to bring that experience together, bring those capabilities into one place so that I can switch off at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's about so super simple and small tasks. For example, reserving focus time from your calendar. Of course, you can do it by yourself, but when you can just click one button and does it for you, it's super simple and super effective.
Well, I don't know about super effective, because I know a lot of people who look at focus time and think it is just put aside for them.
Oh, no.
I guess, sorry, not that I do that I'm putting my hand up. I suffer from that greatly. And Charlie, if you are listening, I keep telling you should listen to Grey Hat Beard and you need to stop booking my focus time for your own projects. But yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Karoliina. A lot of this is things that you could have done before manually and should have done. I know we've talked on the show, Al, about Atomic Habits, the book, and building up good habits. But they're often hard to do. So by making them easier to do, by putting them there front and center, people are more likely to do those things and actually help those habits stick within there. Like the virtual commute, taking that little bit of time at the end of the day to kind of wrap up, finish and step away. It's fairly obvious when you sit down and think about it. And when you have those 5 minutes sit and pause, you go, yes, I really should do that. Viva is about trying to get those things that should be good habits and encouraging you to do that, help building up that habit on a common basis, both as an individual and an organization on there. And it's funny, it's easy to think about Viva as being that kind of org-wide push for you, but it's not. It's about the capabilities for you as an employee as well. I think if it comes to Viva Connections, it's about putting those tools used day in, day out, like and I'll probably start laughing at this point, forgetting to do your timesheets. So by putting those reminders right there on the top of the page and giving that easy prompt, say, right, I can go and do this. The reality is that there are so many different things you do on a daily basis that are simple, that are easy, that in some cases you probably shouldn't have to do. There should be tools that can do it for you, like timesheets. So put it there, make it easy to go, this is what we think, this is what you said you were going to do. Have you done that? And you can just go, yeah, I have. Click, boom, done. Putting those front and center so you can clear out those and again, get back to that focus. You can make that time when you start the day, you can end that day, start it with that journey into Viva Connections. Here's the stuff I need to do. Let's get that done. Let's get focused on the things I need to do instead of getting distracted by emails coming in left, right and center, reminding me about this, reminding me about that, things I don't actually need reminding about. let it focus on the stuff that's important to you. And I think that is the key to this as well.
That's part of the benefits of connections, that personalization element. That I mean, intranets have had personalization for years, you know.
It's been ignored for years as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I think, you know, what we're talking about with connections is being able to see not just your intranet, but to be able to see the news articles that you're interested in. You know, being able to see events, being able to see things that are tailored for you. And as you say, you know, where you have activities that you need to do, making sure that actually you are using the tools that are available to make them as effective as possible with the audience targeting them to the right audience so that you see what you need to see, and making it, as you said, Karoliina, it's one pane of glass, isn't it? Teams, and you can see everything that you need to see in one place. So I think it's, you know, it is building upon a lot of the core concepts that we've had for a long time, but making it easier from the end user. And I'm sure, you know, if Gary were here, he'd say it's obviously much easier from the developer side as well, but it's really focusing on the end user experience.
Yeah, and also it's lots about the mobile experience as well, because we have Teams application, we have SharePoint application, we have all of these. You can use your internet with mobile phone, but when you get those Viva connections, for example, dashboard in your Teams application, it's a super simple step yet again to get those tasks or reports or news that are important to you in the same application, in the same window with your mobile phone. So I think in the future it will be even more important element to end users of how you can really utilize your mobile phone to work, and how it will bring more, even more flexibility in your workday.
He's thinking again. I can see he's thinking again.
You can see that.
For those who are not watching but are listening, Kevin's head just kind of looks off into the distance.
So someone once taught, is it NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and depending on what you think of, you kind of look in different places, and it's always a good one. And I think ever since I've heard that, I've done this really over-exaggerated kind of look up when I think, and then I look to the other side when I think. Anyway, I must look up with the different ones. I think when you're trying to remember things or ponder, you look in different directions, and it works very well. Anyway, what I was thinking of, and when you look down, that's when you're trying to remember what you're talking about, which is why I'm looking down now as well. What I was
I'm just always looking at my own picture.
Yeah. You'll be able to turn that off soon. What I was thinking was kind of Viva's talking about that focus, that ability to kind of get what you want. But you mentioned the mobile one, and you've got the dashboard there and the mobile within Teams. You've also got the feed, which was there. I was kind of it could be interesting to see how well that feed gets, because you think feeds, you think social media, that distraction coming through, always wanting to go and see what's coming, what's more, what's always there, and kind of that technology addiction. It'd be interesting to see how that feed evolves and how relevant and that becomes, how quick that updates. I imagine for larger organizations, the volume of things going through that, if you're getting all your news updates from documents and people working around you, could be the place you kind of go to a lot, and it destroys that connection. So it may be that focus. It may be something to kind of keep an eye on for people there. It'd be interesting. I haven't seen if you got stats of how much that's being looked at, but it'd be good to know that and see what focus can happen as well.
I always think it's quite interesting when you look at the mobile interface for Teams. You know, the activity is the first thing that you see, and it always gets missed on the desktop version. People always go somewhere else, but on the mobile device, that's what you go to first. So actually, it works really effectively. And I think, you know, the different form factors that we've got now with the mobile and the desktop devices, and thinking about what you use for what is actually going to get even more interesting as you get, you know, the companion devices coming through. Whether, you know, applications like Viva will have, you know, different capabilities targeted on different platforms or different form factors will be an interesting one as well. He's doing it again.
Go stuff it.
But the feed, I think it's very, very interesting concept, and I'm really eager to see if it really works in real life, because
Yes.
the targeting must be on point. You don't get so many chances with your employees. Say, look at it like 5 times. If it's not relevant, say it's doomed forever. So
Yeah.
I really hope
does that not? I mean, that's the same with teams generally, isn't it? And I think this is where things like Viva Learning come in. Is Viva Learning to bring in how do we get people to use these tools better is really important, because one of the things that I've seen over many years with teams is people just don't understand all the components that are there. And it's like Word in some cases.
Especially
people are only
where
using
sort
a
of
few
pandemic,
things.
They've just moved quickly. They've taken on meetings, calls, the odd bit of chat. They don't understand all the different things you can do on there.
And I think this is one of the really interesting things is as people start to get more comfortable with the technology, they use it more. They find better ways to work, and so therefore, you can bed down best practice, but you need the best practice and the etiquette and the training, and you need all of those things available to people so that they understand how to get the most out of it for whatever their role is, not the generic, here's the single way that you use Teams. It's their role. But I think that also comes back to, a lot about what's on WorkLab, that the manager of a team is really shaping the culture of the team. How do we as a team, little t team, work together, and how do we make the technology work best for us?
Yeah, and especially when we are talking about field workers, first line workers, I think the role of the manager or the supervisor is ever so more important. So in knowledge workers at the office, you're maybe more used to using computers all day long. But when you go to the factory and you are in the factory floor, and those people have maybe their mobile phones or just like one computer just in the corner, then the manager plays a huge role in all of this.
And I think when you get those teams that actually they're there to do their job, they want to do their job, the technology really doesn't interest them. As information workers, we're kind of we kind of like the technology, but we've got to remember that a lot of first line workers and a lot of information workers, the technology is an enabler. It's just a tool to help them do what they need to do. And actually, they're not interested in, Teams can do this. Well, great. Does that help me do my job? And I think this is where, the Viva Learning elements, making it easier to show people how best to use the technology is absolutely vital.
Yes, and also the connections where you can really target things that are relevant to the factory workers.
Yeah. Could you imagine factory workers? We've won this blah, blah, blah deal with so-and-so company. More work for me. It doesn't resonate. The things you see, a lot of the cases on the intranet aren't going to kind of hit for people. And but what does it actually mean to them? And I think that's where the personalization needs to come through. And it could be almost same article written in different ways, targeting people as to what the understanding is of, this means good news that we have security for this factory. If we think of car factories, you could win a big new deal of a new make that's going to be run from this factory. Your job's suddenly more secure and you can probably have more people there to chat to and bits like that. Rolling out this fantastic new bit of automation. Yeah, a lot of the frontline workers are going to go, so what am I going to do then? Trying to realize what this personalization, what these messages can mean to people is absolutely vital on there and absolutely key. And I think also getting that habit for people to be able to read the messages and get used to these new ways. I remember we rolled out an enterprise social network at one of the banks I worked at, rolled it out to the kind of desk workers and things like that, and we start to see channels and things popping up, kind of corporate ones, people talking about food, photography. It was fantastic, and they were like, great, we don't need to have email for a lot of our bank staff, let's roll it out to them. Suddenly we had a new problem because they were like, we can chat to each other, we can say what we want. The office workers have been used to kind of having those conversations and what was right, what was wrong, what you shouldn't be talking about. Suddenly open it up to these other people. And it's fair to say there were quite a few cases that needed to be talked about with HR and things like that. We managed to not turn it off and kind of keep it going and use the tools itself to educate people and not say you can't do this, but say, maybe you want to think about what you're putting in here and what those message. And people people over a few months where there were certainly some close calls about having it switched off completely. By going and educating people, sitting down, helping explain where the benefits were, saying, have chat, have that friendly conversations, just realize who's watching, realize what you say here, realize what the impact, and people learnt from that. They kind of understood in the same way that the reality is people have learned when to use LinkedIn, when to use Twitter, when to use Instagram, when to use TikTok, where the kind of different elements sit within that. People can learn that with a little bit of guidance. And I think that brings us on to how orgs manage change, getting that out to people, using the tools themselves to help people educate, showing how they can be used there, putting it in ways that are relevant to them, whether that's making that work relevant to them, whether it's showing how you can chat to people to talk about the latest football scores, whether you can use some of these tools to run the sports teams within there. It doesn't kind of matter. You're still teaching people and getting them using it. They then realize how that can be used to make their own jobs easier as well. So thinking about that change that's relevant to each of those different personas within there is absolutely key as well, and helps you learn how you can tailor back the tool to better suit people as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Viva does get rolled out, and as you say, Karoliina, that personalization going to work? Because if it doesn't, and if it doesn't for the beginning, it can get a bad reputation quickly, and doesn't matter what you pick up with afterwards, you're really fighting a losing battle if you don't get that right at the beginning.
Is that the technology's challenge, though, getting that right? Or is that the thinking about the organisation and identifying the, doing the hard work of, that we used to do with intranets? Who needs to see this information? Who is going to benefit from it, and
why
are they genuinely interested?
Yeah.
I think a lot of those questions, they still stand. The top-down comms team who want everybody to read their article, and actually most people aren't really interested, and the frontline workers all have their own interests. I think that's the eternal challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. I laugh because I've done this year a couple of large communication, like modern communication, internal communication projects, which of course include modernizing SharePoint, modernizing internet, bringing it into Teams with Viva connections. And we have had those discussions with global communications team that what about this news we want to tell to all of our employees, but then when we ask the employees, they really don't care about those global news, even though they maybe should, but it's not something they really want to see first thing in their mobile phones. So how to get to midway about what the employees want to see and what the company wants them to see, and how you can combine those.
and if you put what people want to see along with what the company wants you to see, they're far more likely to read it. If you put, I always remember my introduction to SharePoint, we rolled out SharePoint and I kind of joined the team and we turned it on, and within a couple of years, 35 out of the 35,500 employees were using it every day, even though it was a separate intranet. So there was the corporate news there, but the reality was they were using SharePoint because it was meeting what they wanted more. And if we've been able to we have many conversations and fights around that, but if we've been able to bring those two things together on that page to sort of say, here is the corporate news, here's the big deals that have been won. By the way, the new deployment doc is ready, so you can roll this out. This was days of IIS with those big long deployment docs and the good old days without CI/CD. But if you had all those different things all in one place, it means people are more likely to read those other bits of contents in there. If a page is completely irrelevant to people, they will move away. The only thing people used to look at on the homepage really was the buy, sell, rent, trying to find out what they could buy in the second-hand things and bits there. That was far and away the most popular thing. And there was talk about getting rid of it because it wasn't relevant. It was like, whoa, no. You want the stuff that people are looking. Build that in with the rest of it. Otherwise, it just disappears completely.
All of those stories will still resonate for everybody today as well. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that whatever tooling we have, the thing with SharePoint and the thing with connections and the integration between the two means that you get the targeted content for the individual. So long as you design it well, they'll go into Teams and they'll go, all right, I can see what's interesting for me and what the organization wants me to see. And they get the choice then. And I think that makes a successful intranet, making sure you've got that balance, and you've got a nice balance there. Everybody's happy then, aren't they?
I think that's actually one of the key points in here, because you might think that with all these new cool tools, everything will happen automatically. But no, you still need to design things. You still need to have your service design workshops or whatever. You still need to really think about what you are going to, what information goes where, and how you offer it to employees. And I think that's one pitfall companies at the moment may come into, that they think that all these Viva connections and everything are so advanced that they will just work by themselves.
And I think every project that I think we've probably worked on, we probably all have looked at what the success criteria are going to be and how you're going to measure it. And I think that's always something that it's worth thinking about, where you get the comms team saying, success for me is that every article I push out has 80% readership. Okay, that's a nice ambition. But, thinking about that up front is really important. And, some of that you can look at, we were talking about productivity and performance. A lot of what we're doing with the employee experience is saying, how can we make people more productive? Whether it's getting the right information in front of them, whether it's giving them the right tools to allow them to learn, making sure that Kevin can do his timesheets as quickly and easily and accurately as possible. All of these are actually helping the productivity. And I think this is where, being able to measure the productivity, being able to see, we've got a measure that we've identified. And then also being able to say, well, if that measure isn't right, we know where we need to target our change and adoption messaging to actually get people to adapt and change their behavior.
And I think about, I completely agree. I'm first going to say, in terms of getting that measure, I think making sure you think about what it is you're measuring and how you're asking for that, because certainly if you broadcast that, it becomes very easy to kind of fake some of those measures like that. 80%, brilliant. We'll just get everyone to click on it. Yeah, we've met the goal, even though people aren't consuming the content. And I always remember speaking to Moraine, who looks after the Office 365 Distilled podcast, our fellow Happy Hour Etiquette colleague as well. And we were talking about kind of podcast numbers, and they were looking to get a boost. So they brought in a marketing company that were of a decent price. And they said, what do you want? Well, we want to boost our numbers. Fantastic. Next meet, numbers were through the roof. It was actually fantastic. And they're like, yeah, this really works. Sort of said, great, thank you. Next month, straight back down to normal. So whatever they'd done, whether they'd found some people to go and click on it, whether they'd found some automated way of kind of forcing the numbers through there, I don't know. But it is quite important you think about your measures and how you get the reality of those, not just the kind of underlying thing, because they're very easy to fake with bits like that as well. And come back to what Karoliina was saying, I think it's absolutely true. And I would say the AI is important. It's not to downplay that, because it makes life easier. It makes you it gets you through the quickly and easier stuff. You still at this stage need that human curation to look at things. If we look at Viva topics, it will come up with suggested topics. We were talking before the show, we've been looking at in our environment at CPS, and we found quadruple X as a topic on there. Now it's probably where poor Harja put things in as a kind of, I need to go and fill this in later, and never went to fill those up. But that's not going to mean anything to anyone. It could be, maybe it was a special project rolled out for a certain type of company. I don't know. But it's important that you have that curation to go through and understand from it what is real and what isn't. Humans aren't infallible, neither are computers. You need that kind of combination of both to give you the best results from it, really, and to measure it and look at what success goes through from there.
Yeah, and that's all the thing about topics, that it's super interesting. I think will be super relevant, a relevant thing for many organizations in the future. but you still need people to really
write it down,
organize it. Yeah.
And that knowledge needs to be written down somewhere, and Viva Topics hasn't yet got to the point where it can read minds, not quite yet, but
really
maybe
I'm very disappointed now. I thought that's what it was doing.
Sorry, Al, it's under NDA, don't tell anyone.
What, the reading minds?
Yeah. Just in case anyone reads, I am joking. There is no reading of minds from Viva Topics or any of the other Viva tools, or any planned, as far as I know. But
and we're not talking about anything NDA either.
No, exactly on there. But I think it's interesting. I mean, joking aside, I'm going to start with Al because I'm going to drop him in it first. What do you most look forward to coming in the employee experience space that you can talk about, or what would you like to see coming from it?
I think making it all easy to set up is going to be the key thing. I think connections is quite an easy one to set up. I haven't really played with any of the dashboard elements, but that's, I think, absolutely crucial to make that as easy as possible to bring those in. I mean, a lot of the connections elements is really building on good intranet design, solid intranet design, but then integrating that with Viva Learning, and bringing that in so that it becomes seamless. I think that would be the ideal situation. I think one thing that I'm starting to see that I think teams will need to address is, if I want to have insights in my left-hand rail in Teams, and I want to have shifts if I'm a frontline worker, and I want to have my bots, and I want to...
My Viva Connection, my COVID app.
I'm all of a sudden starting to run out of space there.
Turn your monitor to kind of portrait mode,
or get a very tall monitor. Get my landscape monitor, oriented as portrait. But I think that's genuinely going to be probably the next interesting challenge, is how we, whilst we've got one pane of glass, we've got an awful lot in there, and we don't want everything to be the size of a postage stamp so that we can't see it. We want actually to be able to tailor that. So I think there's going to have to be more personalization there to allow me to see what I want to see, the organization to push things down, and to give me that flexibility to see all of these things so that I can actually access them quickly and intuitively.
I think that makes sense. Karoliina, I hope we've given you a little bit of time to think about that.
Yeah, I actually hope that all of this Viva family and everything in it will bring IT and HR and communications departments more together.
Hallelujah, yes.
So I actually came up with this right now, so thanks about this. Because I really hope that in 2023 we are not talking about SharePoint internet projects anymore, but we are talking about how can we develop the whole internal communication platform, which includes SharePoint as the internet platform, but also Teams, Viva Connections, all those different parts together as one.
And what other apps, your organization, your ServiceNows, your Workdays, all of that,
everything
all together. Yeah,
Yammer.
Oh yeah, do we have some?
And Yammer, I like Yammer, and I'm happy.
Yammer is not
absolutely. I don't think Yammer is dead.
But I really hope that all of this talk about employee experience and really brings all the parties more closer together.
And I think for me, it's making things easier. So I love what's now Viva Insights, the mails that it looks through email and brings out your tasks. I want to see more and more things like that don't do everything for me, but give me a little hint saying, is this something, come to your timesheet, is this your timesheet? We noticed that actually you worked with this person on this day. Was it meant to be this project? And trying to get all that information, getting more and more from that data that Microsoft has and surface that. And then, and I'm looking at your comms first t-shirt, Al's making me think of this, I want augmented reality. So there's a company called Simply Videos that was there at Comsverse talking about kind of headsets. And for those who haven't seen, Comsverse was set in Mercedes-Benz World in the UK. So they had lots of lovely cars. And there was a guy walking around with a headset looking a bit like Universal Soldier, talking about the cars. And what he was going and giving a description. And he had within his kind of little eye vision on there, he could see the other people in the team, or it could put up some content from there, so you could walk around, see that content there. You talked earlier about first line workers, Karoliina. To me, I think this is the future. I think the hardware's still got a little bit of way to go, but it's getting closer and closer. Every time I see it, the costs come down, the capabilities of them. So they're probably looking a little bit further ahead. I'm loving that. Al, I know you like going out for walks and taking that little break. I'd love to be able to go for a walk and kind of have those meetings as you're walking around without worrying about it, and sort of see that ability to come through as well. I think it'd be nice.
Yeah, that would be really good to be able to bring, I guess, more formats into Teams meetings.
Yeah.
Make it easier to, we're going out walking and we're having conversations on our phone, but if you've got a headset on, and you can share the video. Oh yeah, well, if you have a look at, and you can see the screen, it'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?
I mean, obviously burnout and all the other things we've talked about have a whole new dimension of places where they can follow you around at that point. But
yes, but we do all have it in our ability to put things on silent and to go do not disturb and to turn things off. Absolutely. We just need the discipline to do it.
Absolutely. Because we all have such good discipline. Talking of which, we said we were going to wrap up by 9 o'clock, so that was neatly led into there. I think it was a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Karoliina, and thank you, Al, on there. Employee experience does matter. It will help your bottom line, and most importantly, it will give you happy employees that want to start the day, want to be focused on what they do, can handle and become more resilient. All of these things help make the organization better, or whatever it is they're trying to do. So look at those things. Do go and check out the Work Lab site. There's many articles. There is a podcast. Once you've listened to us, then you could go and listen to that as well. If you do listen to us, don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to go and give us a rating. We don't get too many because we don't bang on about it, but every now and then I remember at the end of the show. So please do, if you have enjoyed this, go and hit and give us a rating on there. Otherwise, Karoliina, thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Kevin and Al. It was a pleasure.
So I've been Gray.
I've been Hat.
And the beard was hiding off somewhere, but will be joining us next week as we talk about the latest news. Otherwise, thank you very much and speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard Podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.